The moment Jessica's stiletto caught on that impossibly expensive Persian rug, she knew her life was about to change forever. She just didn't know it would change because she was currently airborne, arms windmilling like a cartoon character, sailing directly toward the most powerful man in Connecticut's pharmaceutical industry. A man in a wheelchair. A wheelchair that was now tipping backward as her full body weight slammed into him with the grace of a baby giraffe on roller skates. Time slowed down. She saw his eyes first, dark, piercing, widening with surprise, and then she saw the ceiling because somehow, impossibly, she had landed on top of the disabled CEO of Kim Pharmaceuticals on her very first day as an intern. And Jessica Ortega was sprawled across Jaden Kim's chest, her hair slightly askew, staring into the face of a man who should be furious. But he wasn't furious. He was smiling. And the words that came out of his mouth would haunt her dreams for weeks. Well, if you wanted to propose, you could have just asked. But since you're already down here, marry me. Welcome back to our channel, beautiful people. If you're new here, you're in for a treat. We bring you the most captivating love stories that'll have you laughing, gasping, and maybe shedding a tear or two. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell so you never miss an upload, and drop a comment telling us what you think. Now, let's dive into Jessica and Jaden's wild and absolutely unforgettable love story. 45 minutes earlier, Jessica Ortega stood outside the towering glass building of Kim Pharmaceuticals, her reflection staring back at her with an expression that said, "Girl, you've got this, but also, maybe don't trip." The September Connecticut air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and corporate ambition. The building itself was a masterpiece of modern architecture, all sharp angles and gleaming windows that seemed to judge everyone who approached. "Okay, Jessica," she muttered to herself, adjusting her sky-blue blazer. First day. New job. Don't do anything stupid. She had spent 45 minutes that morning perfecting her appearance. Her long, dark hair cascaded past her shoulders in flawless waves. Her makeup was professional but memorable. A bold lip that said, "I'm serious about this job, but I also have personality." Her mother had called at 6 a.m. to wish her luck. Her best friend, Dominique, had texted a string of prayer hand emojis and a gif of someone dramatically falling downstairs with the caption, "Don't do this." Very funny, Jessica had texted back. "I'm graceful." Famous last words. The lobby of Kim Pharmaceuticals was exactly what she'd expected, intimidatingly beautiful. White marble floors, a water feature, and employees who walked like they were on a runway during Fashion Week. Jessica approached the front desk where a woman with a severe bun and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes was typing furiously. "Hi, I'm Jessica Ortega, starting today as an intern in the Research and Development Department." The woman, her nameplate read Gloria, looked up with the enthusiasm of someone who had been asked this question 40,000 times. Ortega. Gloria typed something, squinted at her screen, then nodded. Yes. You're the new R&D intern. Floor 12. But first, you need to attend the new employee orientation on floor 30. Conference room B. Floor 30. Conference room B. Got it. The elevator is to your left. Don't be late. Mr. Park runs a tight ship. Jessica thanked her and headed toward the elevators, her heels clicking confidently on the marble. She caught her reflection in the mirrored elevator doors and gave herself a tiny nod. She looked good. She felt good. This was going to be a great first day. The elevator arrived with a soft ding, and Jessica stepped inside, pressing the button for floor 30. As the doors began to close, a hand shot through the gap, causing them to spring back open. A tall Korean man stepped in, dressed in a suit that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. He had sharp cheekbones, perfectly styled black hair, and an air of importance that was almost suffocating. He didn't acknowledge her existence. He pressed the button for floor 31, the executive floor, Jessica noted, and stared straight ahead. The elevator began its ascent. Jessica, being Jessica, couldn't handle silence. "Nice weather today, huh?" The man slowly turned his head, looking at her like she had just spoken in ancient Sumerian. "I suppose." His voice was deep and cold, with just a hint of a Korean accent. He turned back to face the doors. "Well, okay then," Jessica thought. "We're not doing small talk." "Cool. That's fine. I didn't want to talk to you anyway, Mr. Too Good for Elevator conversation. The elevator stopped on floor 12 to let someone else on, a young woman with bright pink hair who was carrying an enormous stack of files. She smiled warmly at Jessica. New hire. That obvious? You still have hope in your eyes. Give it a week. Jessica laughed despite herself. That's encouraging. The pink-haired woman, who introduced herself as Yuki from the marketing department, got off on floor 23 with a cheerful, good luck, that felt oddly ominous. By floor 28, Jessica and the unfriendly suit man were alone again. By floor 29, Jessica had decided she didn't like him. By floor 30, the elevator doors opened, and Jessica stepped out, grateful to escape the Arctic atmosphere. She found conference room B easily enough. It was already half full with other new employees, a diverse group of nervous-looking individuals clutching folders and phones like lifelines. Jessica took a seat next to a young man who was sweating so profusely she worried he might actually be melting. First day? She asked. Is it that obvious? He laughed weakly. I'm Trevor. IT department. Jessica. R&D. Oh, fancy. You must be smart. I have my moments. And my not-so-smart moments. It's a balance. Trevor laughed again, this time more genuinely. I like you. You're funny. Before Jessica could respond, the door at the front of the room opened, and a stern-looking man in his 50s walked in. He had the energy of a drill sergeant and the haircut to match. Good morning, everyone. I'm Director Park. Welcome to Kim Pharmaceuticals. Over the next 2 hours, I will be explaining company policies, expectations, and what happens if you violate either. He said violate like it was a personal insult. The orientation was exactly as thrilling as it sounded. Jessica learned about parking validation, security protocols, the location of every fire exit in the building, and approximately 47 different ways she could be fired. At one point, Director Park spent 15 minutes explaining the proper way to submit a reimbursement request. Jessica's mind wandered. She thought about lunch. She thought about whether she'd remembered to turn off her flat iron. She thought about the unfriendly elevator man and wondered if his face would crack if he smiled. Finally, Director Park announced a 15-minute break. Jessica practically sprinted to the hallway, desperate for coffee and fresh air. She found a small break room near the conference room and poured herself a cup of what turned out to be the most aggressively mediocre coffee she'd ever tasted. It's terrible, isn't it? She turned to find a woman about her age leaning against the counter, holding a mug with a cartoon cat on it. She had kind eyes and natural hair styled in beautiful two-strand twists. Terrible is generous, Jessica replied. This tastes like someone described coffee to a person who's never had coffee, and then that person tried to make it. The woman burst out laughing. Oh, I like you. I'm Priya. Finance department. Been here 3 years. Jessica. R&D. Been here approximately 90 minutes. Ah, a baby. Priya grinned. Let me give you the real orientation. The good coffee is on floor 20, left corner near the window. The CEO is rarely seen but apparently gorgeous. And whatever you do, don't eat the tuna salad from the cafeteria on Fridays. Noted on all counts. Especially the tuna. Also, Priya leaned in conspiratorially. Rumor has it the CEO had some kind of accident recently. He's been in a wheelchair for the past 2 months. The whole company's been walking on eggshells. Jessica's eyebrows rose. What happened? Nobody knows for sure. Car accident, some say. Others think it was something else. Either way, he's been different. More isolated. His fiancée has been here practically every day, hovering like a helicopter with a designer handbag. Fiancée? Miranda Lee, well, Miranda something. Old money type. You'll know her when you see her. She walks like she owns the place, which, if she marries him, she technically will. Before Jessica could ask more questions, a bell chimed, signaling the end of the break. Back to corporate torture, Priya sighed. Good luck out there, Jessica. Stop by finance sometime. I'll show you where we hide the good snacks. The second half of orientation was somehow even more boring than the first. Director Park had moved on to explaining the company's health insurance options, which involved a lot of charts and a disturbing amount of fine print. Jessica's phone buzzed in her bag. She sneakily checked it under the table. Dominique, how's it going? Did you trip yet? Jessica, haha. No. I'm very composed and professional. Dominique, send pics or it didn't happen. Jessica, I'm in orientation. No pics allowed. Dominique, boring. Text me when something interesting happens. Jessica slid her phone back into her bag, silently promising the universe that she would remain composed and professional for the rest of the day. The universe, as it turned out, had other plans. At exactly 11:47 a.m., Director Park announced that the orientation was complete and that all new employees should now report to their respective departments. R&D interns, he added, you'll receive a brief tour of the executive floor before heading to your department. Our CEO likes to personally welcome new research team members. Please gather by elevator Banksy. Jessica's heart did a little flutter. She was going to meet the CEO? On her first day? She gathered with 3 other R&D interns near the elevators. There was Marcus, no, wait. His name tag said Malcolm, a quiet guy with glasses who looked like he belonged in a library. Next to him was a woman named Dr. Patricia something or other who was clearly overqualified for an internship. And finally, a young man named Kevin who seemed far too cheerful for a Monday morning. I heard the CEO is like crazy smart, Kevin was saying. Graduated from Harvard at 20. Took over the company at 25. Turned it into a billion-dollar enterprise by 30. And now he's in a wheelchair, Patricia added quietly. Tragic, really. I heard it was a skiing accident, Malcolm offered. I heard it was a car crash, Kevin countered. Maybe it's none of our business, Jessica suggested. They all looked at her. I'm just saying, the man's personal life is his personal life. We're here to work, not gossip. She said this while desperately wanting to know what actually happened, because Jessica was nothing if not a hypocrite when it came to interesting information. The elevator arrived, and they all stepped inside. Floor 31. The executive floor. When the doors opened, Jessica understood immediately why this floor had its own button. If the lobby was impressive, the executive floor was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Connecticut countryside. The furniture was sleek and modern, all clean lines and neutral colors. Art hung on the walls. And there, at the end of a long hallway, was a massive set of double doors. The CEO's office. A young woman with a clipboard approached them. She had the crisp efficiency of someone who color-coded everything. Welcome to the executive floor. I'm Hyojin, executive assistant to Mr. Kim. He'll be meeting with you shortly in his office. Please wait here. She gestured to a seating area that looked like it belonged in a museum. Jessica sat down carefully, half afraid she'd leave a mark on the pristine white couch. They waited, and waited, and waited. After 15 minutes, Hyojin returned, looking slightly frazzled. Mr. Kim apologizes for the delay. There's been a small situation. He'll see you in 5 minutes. In the meantime, feel free to familiarize yourself with the space. She hurried off toward the double doors, disappearing inside. Jessica stood up, stretching her legs. She wandered toward the windows, admiring the view. Below, the city of Hartford spread out like a miniature model. Cars moved like ants. People were invisible specks. She turned to head back to the seating area. And that's when she saw it. The Persian rug. It was beautiful, truly. Rich reds and deep blues, intricate patterns that spoke of craftsmanship and culture, and probably a price tag with too many zeros. It was also, apparently, treacherous. The edge of the rug had curled up slightly, so slightly that Jessica didn't notice until her stiletto heel caught on it. Time seemed to slow. She felt herself pitching forward, arms flailing, desperately trying to regain balance. But there was no balance to be found. There was only forward momentum. And directly in her path, emerging from those massive double doors, was a man in a wheelchair. He was handsome, devastatingly so. Sharp jawline, dark eyes, perfectly styled black hair that probably had its own skincare routine. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that fit him like a second skin. He was also directly in Jessica's trajectory. Watch out, she tried to scream, but it came out as more of a garbled yelp. She slammed into him. The wheelchair tipped. They went down together. Jessica landed on top of him with a graceless OOF, her face inches from his, her hair, her beautiful, slightly askew and covering one eye like a discount cousin ITT. Papers flew everywhere. His wheelchair rolled away dramatically, bumping into a wall. For a moment, neither of them moved. Jessica stared into his dark eyes, frozen in horror. This was it. This was how she died. Not in a blaze of glory, but in a blaze of humiliation, killed by a man she had just assaulted with her entire body weight. She waited for the yelling to start. She waited for security to be called. She waited for the earth to open up and swallow her whole. But Jaden Kim did none of those things. Instead, he smiled. It was a slow smile, starting at the corners of his mouth and spreading until it reached his eyes, crinkling them slightly. Well, he said, his voice low and amused, if you wanted to propose, you could have just asked. But since you're already down here, marry me. Jessica's brain short-circuited. What? Marry me, he repeated, as casually as if he were asking about the weather. I just knocked you out of your wheelchair. I noticed. On your own floor. Also noticed. I could have killed you. Unlikely. I'm very sturdy. Jessica scrambled off of him, her face burning with embarrassment. She straightened her blazer, fixed her wig, and tried to gather the shattered remains of her dignity. I am so sorry, Mr. Kim. I don't know what happened. The rug, and my heel. The rug is a hazard, he said calmly. I've told them to fix it 3 times. Consider this my evidence. She stared at him, bewildered. You're not angry? Should I be? I tackled you. I've been tackled by worse. He shifted slightly, and for a moment, something flickered across his face, something she couldn't quite read. Help me up. Jessica hurried to his side, grasping his hand. It was warm and strong, his grip firm as she helped him back into his wheelchair. Up close, he was even more handsome. High cheekbones, a strong nose, lips that curved into a perpetual almost smile. He smelled like expensive cologne and what Jessica's brain unhelpfully identified as money. Thank you, he said, settling back into the chair. I don't believe we've been formally introduced. I'm Jaden Kim. Jessica Ortega. R&D intern. Former R&D intern, probably after this. Why would you be former? Because I just full-body tackled the CEO on my first day? I don't remember filing any complaints. He said it so matter-of-factly that Jessica didn't know how to respond. By now, the other interns had gathered around, their faces a mixture of horror and fascination. Hyojin had rushed over, looking like she might faint. Mr. Kim, are you all right? Should I call Dr. Yu? Should I? I'm fine, Hyojin. It was just a minor collision. Minor? The word burst out of Jessica before she could stop it. I literally flew through the air like a defective superhero. Jaden laughed. Actually laughed. It was a warm sound, genuine and surprised, like he hadn't expected to find anything funny. I like you, Jessica Ortega, he said, his eyes meeting hers. You're honest. I'm a disaster is what I am. Perhaps. But an entertaining one. He turned to the other interns, who were standing frozen like deer in headlights. Welcome to Kim Pharmaceuticals, everyone. I apologize for the unconventional introduction. Please, come into my office. Let's start over. The CEO's office was, predictably, magnificent. Massive windows. Minimalist furniture. A desk that looked like it could double as a helicopter landing pad. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with medical journals, business books, and what appeared to be a surprisingly large collection of comic books. Jessica noticed the comics, but decided not to comment. She had caused enough chaos for one morning. Please sit, Jaden said, gesturing to a seating area near the windows. His wheelchair moved smoothly across the floor as he positioned himself facing them. Jessica sat as far from him as possible, still mortified. As I'm sure you know, Kim Pharmaceuticals is one of the leading pharmaceutical research companies in the country, Jaden began. Our R&D department is where innovation happens. You 4 have been selected because you showed exceptional promise. Don't disappoint me. He said it lightly, but there was steel underneath. You'll be working under Dr. Helen Cho, who runs our research division. She's brilliant and demanding in equal measure. If you can survive her, you can survive anything. Is she intense? Kevin asked nervously. She once made an intern cry by asking him a simple question about molecular structures. What was his answer? There wasn't one. That was the problem. Jessica fought the urge to laugh. Despite her lingering embarrassment, she found herself oddly charmed by Jaden Kim. He wasn't what she'd expected. CEOs were supposed to be cold and distant, obsessed with numbers and profits. This man quoted comics and made jokes about crying interns. Any questions? Jaden asked. Malcolm raised his hand. What's the company's current focus in terms of research priorities? Excellent question. We're currently focused on developing more accessible treatments for chronic conditions. Specifically, we're working on a new pain management medication that could revolutionize. The door burst open. Jaden. A woman swept into the room like a small, designer-clad hurricane. She was tall and thin, with sharp features and sharper eyes. Her black hair was perfectly styled in a sleek bob, and she wore an expensive white dress. Everything about her screamed expensive and dangerous. Miranda, Jaden said, his voice cooling noticeably. I'm in a meeting. I know. I don't care. She strode across the room, completely ignoring the 4 interns who were pressing themselves into their chairs like they hoped to become invisible. We need to talk about the engagement party. The florist says they can't get the orchids I want, and I told them. This isn't the time. It's never the time with you. She turned, finally acknowledging the interns with a dismissive glance. Who are these people? New R&D interns. How nice. Her tone suggested she found nothing nice about it. Her gaze swept over Malcolm, Patricia, Kevin, and finally landed on Jessica. And who's this? There was something in her voice, a sharpness, a challenge, that made Jessica's spine straighten. Jessica Ortega, she said, standing up because she refused to be looked down on any more than necessary. R&D intern. Nice to meet you. Miranda's eyes narrowed, traveling up and down Jessica's form in a way that was clearly meant to be insulting. Charming, she said flatly. Thank you. I try. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jaden cleared his throat. Miranda, we'll discuss the party later. I need to finish here. Fine. Miranda leaned down, pressing a kiss to Jaden's cheek that was more performance than affection. Dinner tonight. That new Italian place. 8 o'clock. Don't be late. She swept out as dramatically as she'd arrived, leaving a cloud of expensive perfume in her wake. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Jaden sighed, running a hand through his hair in a surprisingly human gesture. I apologize for the interruption. Where were we? Chronic pain management? Patricia offered helpfully. Right. Yes. He seemed to be gathering himself, putting the CEO mask back on. As I was saying. But Jessica barely heard the rest. She was thinking about the way Miranda had looked at her, like she was something to be scraped off the bottom of a designer shoe. She was thinking about the way Jaden's voice had changed when his fiancé entered, colder, more distant. And she was thinking about that proposal. Marry me. Obviously, he'd been joking. Probably still in shock from being knocked to the ground. People said strange things when their brains were rattled. But still, it was a strange thing to say. Jessica's first week at Kim Pharmaceuticals was a blur of information, training sessions, and trying desperately to avoid both Jaden Kim and any rugs that might be harboring ill intentions. She was assigned to a team working on clinical trial data, which meant long hours staring at spreadsheets and trying to make sense of numbers that seemed determined to remain nonsensical. Her supervisor, Dr. Helen Cho, was exactly as terrifying as advertised. She was a small Korean woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that seemed to see straight through any excuse or weakness. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. A single raised eyebrow from Dr. Cho could reduce a grown adult to apologetic stammering. Ortega, she said on Jessica's 3rd day, appearing at her desk like a well-dressed ghost. Explain the inconsistency on page 47. Jessica pulled up page 47, studied it for approximately 4 seconds, and said, the data from the secondary trial doesn't align with the primary results. There's a 0.3% variance that should have been flagged during initial review. Dr. Cho's expression didn't change. And why do you think it wasn't? Human error, most likely. Or the reviewing software has a threshold that didn't catch variations this small. That was it. That was all she said. But when she walked away, Yuki from marketing, who had become something of a work friend, leaned over and whispered, she likes you. She does? She didn't say anything. Exactly. When she doesn't like you, she says plenty. By Friday, Jessica had settled into a rhythm. Morning coffee from the good machine on floor 20. Meetings that ran too long. Lunch with Priya from finance and Yuki from marketing, who had formed an unofficial new friend coalition. What she hadn't done was see Jaden Kim again. Not that she was looking for him. She absolutely wasn't. "You're looking for him," Priya said during lunch on Friday. "I am not. Your eyes just did a sweep of the cafeteria for the third time in 2 minutes. I'm admiring the architecture. The architecture is the same as it was 30 seconds ago." Jessica stabbed her salad with unnecessary violence. "Fine. Maybe I'm a little curious. The man proposed to me after I tackled him. That's strange, right? That's not normal CEO behavior." Yuki snorted. "Nothing about Jaden Kim is normal CEO behavior. Have you seen the comic book collection in his office? I noticed. He has a full run of Spider-Man from the 1970s in there. Original prints. I heard he paid 6 figures for some of them. He also," Priya added, lowering her voice, "has been acting weird ever since the accident." "Weird how?" "Weird like, different. Before, he was everywhere. Walking the floors, talking to employees, showing up at random meetings. Now he's always in his office. Only comes out for scheduled appearances. Well, he's in a wheelchair now. Maybe it's harder to get around. The building has excellent accessibility. It's not that." Priya stirred her soup thoughtfully. "Something changed after the accident. And it's not just the wheelchair." Jessica thought about this for the rest of the afternoon. She thought about it during her commute home. She thought about it while making dinner in her apartment, a nice 2-bedroom in a converted warehouse that she loved for its exposed brick and hated for its temperamental plumbing. She was still thinking about it when her phone rang. "Tell me everything," Dominique demanded without preamble. "You've been there a week and I've gotten exactly 3 texts. What's happening? Is the CEO hot? Did you trip again? Are there any cute coworkers?" Jessica laughed, settling onto her couch with a glass of wine. "In order, a lot, yes, no, and define cute. Start with the CEO being hot. That's the priority. He's very attractive. Dark hair, amazing bone structure, looks like he walked out of a Korean drama. And nothing. He's engaged. To who? A terrifying woman named Miranda who looks at other women like we're all after her man. Are you after her man?" "Dom. I'm just asking. You described his bone structure. That's specific." Jessica groaned. "I tackled him on my first day. Knocked him right out of his wheelchair. My only goal is to make sure he never remembers that moment or me." There was a pause. "You did what?" Jessica told her the whole story, the rug, the flying, the landing, the bizarre proposal. By the end, Dominique was laughing so hard she could barely speak. He proposed after you tackled him. It was clearly a joke." "Was it though?" "Of course it was. He was probably concussed." "Or," Dominique said, finally catching her breath, "he's one of those eccentric billionaires who makes decisions based on vibes." "That's not a thing. You don't know that. Rich people are weird." "Good night, Dominique." "Wait. I have more questions." "Good night." She hung up, smiling despite herself. Her phone buzzed immediately with a text, "This isn't over. I expect a full report next week." Jessica sent back a string of eye-roll emojis and headed to bed. The following Monday brought drama. Not the fun, entertaining kind. The corporate kind. It started when Jessica arrived at her desk to find an email from Hyojin, the executive assistant. Subject, mandatory meeting, research department, CEO's office, 10 a.m. All R&D team members are required to attend a mandatory meeting in Mr. Kim's office at 10 a.m. today. Please be prompt. Jessica stared at the email like it contained a bomb. CEO's office. She was going back to the scene of the crime. "You look like someone told you there's a pop quiz," Kevin said, appearing at her desk with 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one. "I'm going back to the executive floor." "So? It's just a meeting." "Kevin. That floor tried to kill me. The rug attempted homicide. And now I have to face the man I full-body tackled like a deranged football player. Maybe he forgot. No one forgets being knocked out of their wheelchair by an intern on her first day." Fair point. At 9:55 a.m., Jessica made her way to floor 31, heart pounding. She'd spent extra time on her appearance that morning, a pale pink blouse, tailored black pants, her hair perfectly laid. She looked professional. She also looked like someone preparing for battle, which wasn't far from the truth. The meeting was in a conference room adjacent to Jaden's office, Thank God, because Jessica wasn't sure she could handle walking past that rug again without suffering some kind of trauma response. Dr. Cho was already there, along with about 15 other R&D team members. Jessica slid into a seat near the back, trying to be invisible. At exactly 10 a.m., the door opened. Jaden Kim wheeled himself in. He looked different today, more tired, maybe, though his suit was as impeccable as ever. Navy blue, perfectly tailored, with a subtle stripe. Their eyes met across the room. He smiled. It was small, barely there, but Jessica felt it like a physical thing. She looked away, focusing intently on her notepad like it contained the secrets of the universe. Thank you all for coming, Jaden began. I'll keep this brief. As you know, Kim Pharmaceuticals is entering the final phase of clinical trials for KP47, our new pain management medication. Murmurs of recognition. KP47 was the project everyone had been working toward, the company's flagship research initiative. What you don't know, he continued, is that we've encountered some complications. The FDA has flagged several aspects of our trial data for additional review. It's not a rejection, not yet, but it's a warning sign. The room tensed. We have 4 weeks to provide supplementary data and address their concerns. I'm creating a special task force to handle this. Dr. Cho will lead the effort, and she has full authority to pull resources as needed. Dr. Cho nodded sharply, her expression suggesting she was already planning her attack strategy. I want to be clear, Jaden said, his voice hardening slightly. This project is the company's priority. Everything else takes a back seat until the FDA is satisfied. I expect everyone to give their best effort. Our reputation and, more importantly, the patients who need this medication are counting on us. The meeting continued with more details, assignments, timelines. Jessica took diligent notes, though her mind kept wandering to questions she couldn't answer. Why did he smile at her like that? Why was Miranda always hovering around the building like a designer-clad surveillance drone? And what exactly had happened to put Jaden Kim in that wheelchair? After the meeting ended, Jessica tried to slip out quietly. She failed. Ms. Ortega. His voice stopped her at the door. She turned slowly, like someone in a horror movie hearing a noise in the basement. Yes, Mr. Kim? The other employees filed out, shooting curious glances over their shoulders. Soon, it was just Jessica, Jaden, and Dr. Cho, who was studying them both with unreadable eyes. I wanted to check in, Jaden said. Your first week has been eventful. That's one word for it. How are you finding the work? Challenging. But good challenging. Dr. Cho is an excellent supervisor. Dr. Cho's eyebrow raised slightly, her version of a beam of approval. Good. Jaden paused, and something shifted in his expression. I also wanted to apologize. For what? My fiancé's behavior last week. She can be intense. Jessica didn't know what to say to that. Yes, your fiancé looked at me like I was trash she wanted incinerated seemed inappropriate. It's fine, she said instead. We're all intense sometimes. He laughed, that same warm, surprised sound from the first day. That's diplomatic of you. I'm a very diplomatic person. Except when I'm tackling people. About that. His eyes crinkled. Have you considered a career in football? You've got the form. I'm going to choose to believe that's a compliment. It was. They stared at each other for a moment too long. Dr. Cho cleared her throat meaningfully. Well, Jessica said quickly, I should get back to work. Thank you for the meeting, Mr. Kim. Dr. Cho. She fled before anyone could stop her. 3 weeks into the KP47 crisis, Jessica was exhausted. She was also somehow thriving. The pressure of the FDA review had pushed everyone to their limits, but Jessica discovered she worked well under pressure. Numbers that had seemed confusing became clear patterns. Problems that seemed insurmountable revealed solutions when she looked at them from different angles. Dr. Cho noticed. You have good instincts, she told Jessica one night when they were the last 2 people in the lab. Most people panic under this kind of pressure. You get calmer. My grandmother used to say panic is just energy going the wrong direction. Might as well redirect it somewhere useful. Dr. Cho almost smiled. It was terrifying. Your grandmother sounds like a smart woman. She was. She also made the best jollof rice on the East Coast, so she was basically perfect. I'll take your word for it. They worked in companionable silence for another hour before Dr. Cho announced she was going home. Jessica stayed. She was so close to finding the inconsistency in the Phase 2 data, She could feel it. By 11:47 p.m., the office was silent. By midnight, she found it. "Oh my God," she whispered, staring at her screen. The inconsistency wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Someone had altered the trial data. Not dramatically, just enough to skew results, to make the medication appear more effective than the raw data suggested. Jessica's mind raced. If she was right, if someone had deliberately manipulated the data, this was fraud. Corporate fraud at the highest level. But who would benefit? Her phone buzzed, a text from the building's security system reminding her that the parking garage closed at 1 a.m. She needed to leave. But first, she needed to save this. Document everything. Make copies. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, saving files to both her work drive and her personal email. She was so focused, she didn't hear the elevator ding. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching. She didn't know anyone was there until a voice said, "Working late." Jessica nearly levitated out of her chair. Jesus Christ. Jaden Kim was behind her, his wheelchair silent on the carpeted floor, looking at her with a mixture of amusement and concern. "Sorry. Didn't mean to scare you." "Well, you failed. You absolutely meant to scare me." She clutched her chest. "What are you doing here?" "It's midnight. I could ask you the same thing." "I'm working. On the project. The one you assigned." "I didn't assign you to work until midnight. Some of us are dedicated. Some of us need sleep." Jessica was acutely aware that she looked like a disaster, hair escaping from her clip, coffee stain on her sleeve from approximately 6 p.m., eyes probably wild from staring at numbers for 8 hours straight. "Why are you here?" she asked again. Jaden hesitated. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. "I come here sometimes. When I need to think. At midnight. The building is quiet. No one watching. No one expecting things." There was something heavy in his voice. Jessica's anger faded, replaced by something else, something softer. "Mr. Kim." "Jaden." "What?" "Call me Jaden. We're past formalities. You've seen me horizontal." She couldn't help it, she laughed. The tension in the room shifted. "Fine. Jaden." She gestured to her screen. "I found something. Something important." His expression sharpened. "What kind of something?" She showed him. For the next 30 minutes, she walked him through her discovery. The altered data points, the pattern of changes, the implications. Jaden's face grew darker with each revelation. "You're certain?" he asked when she finished. 99%. The changes are subtle enough to pass casual review, but the pattern is clear when you know what to look for. Who had access to modify this data? Only senior researchers. And, she hesitated, executive level. Their eyes met. Neither of them said what they were both thinking. The investigation took on new urgency after that night. Jaden assigned a small, trusted team, Jessica, Dr. Cho, and 2 senior researchers with decades of experience, to quietly investigate while the rest of the company continued normal operations. Jessica found herself spending more time with Jaden Kim than she ever expected. Late nights in his office, going over data. Early morning meetings before anyone else arrived. Working lunches where they debated methodologies and forgot to actually eat. She learned things about him. He was born in Seoul but moved to Connecticut when he was 12. His parents had founded Kim Pharmaceuticals with a single lab and a dream of making healthcare more accessible. They died in a car accident when he was 23, leaving him the company and a legacy he was terrified of failing. He read comic books to relax because they were simple, good guys, bad guys, clear moral lines. He hated the corporate events he was required to attend. He had a terrible sense of direction and once got lost in his own building for 20 minutes. "In my defense," he said when she laughed about this, "it was my first week as CEO. The building is confusing." "It's not that confusing," says the woman who tackled me because she got confused by a rug. That rug was defective. She learned other things too. Like how his face changed when he talked about his fiancée, becoming blank, closed off. Like how he never mentioned the accident that put him in the wheelchair. Like how sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, he looked profoundly sad. One night, 3 weeks into their investigation, they finally found the source of the data manipulation. Miranda. Not directly, she was too smart for that. But through a shell company she controlled, She had invested heavily in a competitor that would benefit enormously if Kim Pharmaceuticals' medication failed FDA review. She had paid a senior researcher, Dr. Nathan Vale, a man who had been with the company for 15 years, to subtly alter the data. If they hadn't caught it, the medication would have failed. Stock prices would have plummeted. And Miranda, positioned perfectly, would have made millions. She was going to destroy the company, Jessica said, staring at the evidence they'd compiled. Her own fiancé's company. Jaden's expression was unreadable. She was never in it for love. Then why are you marrying her? The words were out before Jessica could stop them. Jaden was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something strange. He stood up. Simply stood. Out of the wheelchair. Jessica's brain stopped functioning. But you're what? I can walk, he said quietly. I've always been able to walk. But the accident, the wheelchair. There was no accident. He moved to the window, standing with his back to her. I lied. Jessica opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I need you to explain that sentence immediately, because I am having a complete mental breakdown right now. Jaden turned back to face her. When Miranda and I got engaged, it was convenient. Two powerful families, business connections, the kind of marriage that makes sense on paper. I thought maybe, over time, feelings would develop. But they didn't. No, they didn't. And I started noticing things. Phone calls she'd taken private. Meetings she wouldn't explain. Numbers that didn't add up in her personal accounts. So you faked being disabled? I needed to know if she was with me because she cared about me or because of what I could give her. I told her I'd been in an accident. That I might never walk again. Jessica stared at him. That's elaborate. I'm an elaborate person. That's insane is what that is. Perhaps. He moved closer, and Jessica was struck again by how tall he was, how different he looked standing. More powerful. More present. But it worked. Within a week, she was already talking to divorce lawyers. Within 2 weeks, I caught her having lunch with the CEO of our biggest competitor. Within a month, I had enough evidence to investigate. And the marriage proposal to me? On the floor? When I tackled you. A smile ghosted across his face. That was spontaneous. Spontaneous. You knocked me over and looked at me with such genuine horror, no calculation, no agenda, just pure mortified humanity. I hadn't seen anyone look at me like that in years. Everyone is always so careful around me. So you proposed because I wasn't careful? I proposed because you were real. He took another step closer. You're the most real person I've met in a very long time, Jessica Ortega. Jessica's heart was doing something complicated, racing and stopping and fluttering all at once. This is insane, she repeated, but her voice had lost its edge. Probably. You've been lying to everyone for months. Yes. That's morally questionable at best. I know. And you're telling me this because I'm tired of lying. Because you deserve to know. And because. He hesitated, vulnerability flickering across his features. I'd like to stop pretending. With you, at least. The office was very quiet. Outside, the city glittered with midnight lights. Jessica thought about everything she knew, the conspiracy, the betrayal, the elaborate deception. She thought about the man standing before her, powerful and flawed and unexpectedly honest in this single moment. If I help you take Miranda down, she said slowly, what happens then? Then we save the company. The medication goes to market. Patients who need it get access to it. And us. The question hung between them. That depends, Jaden said carefully, on what you want. Jessica considered. I want answers first. Then dinner. Then we'll see. He smiled, that warm, surprised smile that did things to her heart. I can work with that. The takedown of Miranda Sinclair was surgical. Using the evidence Jessica had uncovered and Jaden's additional documentation, they built an airtight case. Corporate fraud. Securities manipulation. Conspiracy to commit investor fraud. They brought in the FBI quietly. Miranda was arrested at her apartment on a Tuesday morning, still in her designer robe, her face a mask of shock and fury. Dr. Nathan Vale, the researcher she'd bribed, broke almost immediately, providing testimony that implicated her fully. The engagement was officially over. The story broke 3 days later. Pharmaceutical heiress arrested in corporate fraud scheme. CEO's fiancé allegedly manipulated research data. Kim Pharmaceuticals stock soars after whistleblower uncovers conspiracy. Jessica's name wasn't in the articles. Jaden had made sure of that. But she knew. And he knew. And that was enough. On the day the story broke, Jaden appeared at her desk. Walking. Without the wheelchair. The office went silent. Mr. Kim? Gloria from the front desk looked like she might faint. You're walking. I am. But your accident, your legs, never actually happened. He said it calmly, like he was discussing the weather. I apologize for the deception. It was necessary for the investigation. He continued through the office, leaving a wake of stunned employees, until he reached Jessica's desk. Ms. Ortega. Mr. Kim. I believe I owe you dinner. I believe you owe me several dinners. And an explanation. And possibly therapy to process this entire experience. That can be arranged. He smiled. Tonight? 7 o'clock. Every eye in the office was on them. Jessica thought about professionalism. About boundaries. About the fact that dating the CEO of your company was definitely, probably, absolutely a complicated idea. Then she thought about the way he laughed. The way he looked at her like she was real and interesting and worth knowing. 7 o'clock, she agreed. But I'm ordering the most expensive thing on the menu. I'd expect nothing less. Dinner was at a small Italian restaurant in Hartford, not fancy, but warm and intimate, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in wine bottles. I expected something more extravagant, Jessica admitted, looking around. Do you want extravagant? No. This is nice. I'm just surprised. I'm full of surprises. Don't I know it? They talked for hours. Not about the case or the company or the chaos of the past few weeks. About everything else. He told her about his childhood in Seoul, about his grandmother who taught him to play chess, about the pressure of being the only son expected to carry on a family legacy. She told him about growing up in New York, about her grandmother's cooking, about the path that led her to pharmaceutical research. They disagreed about music. She loved R&B. He preferred classical. They agreed about movies. Both preferred comedies to dramas. They found common ground on books. Both had read every Harry Potter novel multiple times and would defend that fact vigorously. By the time dessert arrived, tiramisu, shared, Jessica had almost forgotten he was her CEO. He was just Jaden. I want to do this again, he said as they walked to his car. This? Dinner. Everything. Talking. Laughing. Being with you. Jessica stopped walking. Jaden. You know this is complicated, right? You're literally my boss's boss's boss. There are HR policies. There are optics. There are. I'll move you to a different department. Or a different building. Or I'll step down as CEO. That's insane. You can't step down. I can do whatever I want. It's my company. That's not, you're missing the point. He kissed her. It was sudden and soft and over before she fully processed it. I've wanted to do that since you tackled me, he said. You were on the ground. That's weird. I never claimed to be normal. She laughed despite herself. No, you definitely did not. They stood in the parking lot, the autumn air cool around them, and Jessica felt something shift. Maybe it wouldn't be simple. Maybe it would be messy and complicated and professionally questionable. But when had she ever wanted simple? One date at a time, she said finally. We take it slow. See what happens. Slow, he agreed. I can do slow. Can you? Because your proposal on day one strategy suggests otherwise. That was spontaneous. That was unhinged. Spontaneously unhinged. She laughed again, and he grinned, and something in her heart settled into place. This was going to be an adventure. 6 months later. The KP-47 medication received FDA approval in the spring. Kim Pharmaceuticals' stock hit an all-time high. Jessica was promoted to head of a new research initiative focused on accessible treatments for underserved communities, a project she had proposed herself and championed until it became reality. She and Jaden had dinner every Thursday. Saturday brunches became tradition. She met his remaining family, a grandmother in Seoul who insisted Jessica call her Halmoni and taught her how to make kimchi. He met hers, a Sunday dinner in New York where Dominique spent the entire meal asking increasingly inappropriate questions and Jessica's mother kept trying to feed him scones. They fought sometimes. About work boundaries, he had a tendency to show up at her office with lunch, which was sweet but unprofessional. About his workaholic tendencies, he still worked 16-hour days. She staged interventions. About the right way to load a dishwasher, this one was ongoing and might never be resolved. But they figured it out. Together. One Thursday, over pasta at their favorite restaurant, Jaden set down his fork. I want to ask you something. If it's about the dishwasher, my answer hasn't changed. It's not about the dishwasher. His voice was serious. Jessica looked up. He was holding a small velvet box. I know, he said slow. I know it's complicated. I know there are 100 reasons why this is too fast. He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the candlelight, simple, elegant, beautiful. But I also know that I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You're the person I want to argue with about dishwashers for the next 50 years. Jessica stared at the ring, then at him. You're proposing again. I am. After 6 months. You said 1 date at a time. This is technically I've lost count. 73. I've been counting. 73 dates. That's reasonable. It's not reasonable at all. No, he admitted. But neither are we. She was crying, she realized. Actual tears on her face. I'm going to need you to ask properly. On one knee. He got down on one knee. In the middle of the restaurant. Every patron was now watching. Jessica Ortega. Will you? Yes. I didn't finish. I don't care. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Now get up and kiss me before I change my mind. He got up. He kissed her. The restaurant erupted in applause. And Jessica thought about how it all started: a rug, a tackle, a wheelchair that wasn't needed, and a question that changed everything. She wouldn't have wanted it any other way. And that, beautiful people, is the story of how Jessica Ortega quite literally knocked her way into love. What did you think? Were you surprised by Jaden's big secret? Did you laugh? Did you cry? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. It helps us out more than you know. Share it with a friend who loves a good love story, and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss our next upload. See you in the next one.